Javier invited me here today just to tell you a little bit about the Asia Pacific region, because it's obviously it's a very interesting region and a lot of great things happening in the online travel industry. So hopefully I'll be able to give you a little bit of an understanding of the market itself. It's a very large market, and also some of the consumer trends that are happening in the really big markets, and some of the technology trends as well that maybe might be of interest to you, or maybe you might want to watch in the future. So the Asia-Pacific region, as I'm sure you're aware, is home to large modern economies such as Japan, Korea, Australia, which have very affluent middle classes and very vibrant travel industries. They enjoy advanced digital infrastructure, touting some of the world's highest internet usage and broadband penetration rates. Asia-Pacific is a huge consumer market, with 61% of the world's population living in Asia-Pacific. But really, the developing markets are the story where everybody's watching. Markets such as in Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia are growing very, very rapidly, albeit from a very small base. However, China and India are really where everybody's watching. They are equivalent to 37% of the world's population and 61% of the population of Asia-Pacific. So first of all, a few facts. The emerging affluent urban middle class in developing economies such as China and India are really driving where more disposable income and increased leisure time are feeding appetites for domestic and foreign travel. Another really key trend, the rise of low-cost carriers. Obviously in Europe, this is very prevalent, but in Asia now there are over 40 low-cost carriers, and this number is increasing every day. And they're making long-distance travel much more affordable. And the new middle classes of travel are turning to the internet in large numbers to research and plan their travel. In fact, some research done in China showed that online travelers are actually more affluent than the average internet user. They're actually generally in Asia-Pacific slightly older, better educated, and wealthier than the average internet user in the region. So travel is a good segment to be in. Also, travel search engines are really emerging in China and India. And online travel agents are rolling out new travel services for mobile phone users. I'll talk a little bit more about mobile, because mobile is one of the massive trends in Asia, and there are some very interesting things that I think can actually certainly be watched for Europe. Sometimes in markets that are developing, you'll find that technologies leapfrog other technologies, and I think mobile is certainly one of those. So the internet population in Asia-Pacific, you can see Japan, South Korea, and Australia are really the key areas, and they have enjoyed huge digital infrastructure. However, you can see from this graph that China is massive. Actually in 2006, there were 130 million internet users, and by next year there's expected to be 260 million internet users, which is mind-boggling when you consider the population of Spain is 45 million people. A massive market. However, that's still only very low penetration levels. China has around 9% penetration of the internet, whereas somewhere like India, which is also showing huge growth and is expected to have 70 million users, only has approximately 3% online. So we're likely to see really, really massive growth in these markets. And broadband penetration is also very high in Asia-Pacific. In fact, it's significantly higher than in the United States. South Korea leads broadband penetration and overall internet penetration in the world. It has around 74% of all households have broadband. This means that Web 2.0 technologies and rich media is growing massively because it's very fast and very user-friendly. You can also see here that China and India, although they're growing fast, they're still very small in terms of broadband penetration, and this is a bit of a disadvantage for those markets. So if we just have a look at online travel market maturity, the markets in Asia are very different. They're at very different levels of development. Japan is the largest online travel market in Asia Pacific, followed by Australia and New Zealand, and then by Korea. However, the majority of online bookings in Japan are mainly for domestic travel, because only 5% of the population in Japan take international trips. This is increasing, as I'll show you later, but is key to understand when you're marketing a destination or your services from Spain. Australia and New Zealand is the second largest, and that's been driven by low-cost carriers and last-minute hotel aggregators. However, broadband penetration isn't as high as in Korea and Japan, and this is limiting Web 2.0. So we have the Southeast Asian markets, Hong Kong, Singapore, they both have very high internet penetration, but they're very small populations, so they don't have huge online travel markets in terms of dollars. Whereas Thailand, Malaysia, Thailand's still very basic, very little infrastructure, problems with credit cards, but still growing. And Malaysia is increasing as low-cost carrier AirAsia has really pushed consumers to book online. And China and India, they have, as we've seen, they have limited online penetration, but they're just such large markets that it doesn't really matter. Just a small percentage of those markets, and you'll find big dollars. So let's have a look at Asian consumers. I think no matter what industry or market you're in, the last 10 years has seen an explosion of media channels and content providers, and this is no different in Asia. In fact, it's possibly even more. From the oldest to the newest media, few industries have escaped this proliferation of content. Digital technologies are reshaping consumers' usage. People are increasingly multitasking, and again, in Asia, this is particularly key. When using the internet, almost 32% of Asians between 16 and 24 are also watching the TV. 40% of them are also listening to the radio at the same time. So it's hard to cut through and penetrate your brand. However, also nascent mobile technologies are strengthening the tendency to reinforce anytime, anywhere. And the connector of the future for Asia is likely to be the mobile telephone, where mobile phones in China, for example, have an uptake of 4-to-1 to the PC, the personal computer. So Asia is clearly a growing market where technology and innovation is likely to be taken on board at a quicker rate than in other markets. The potential growth is mind-boggling, but it's been proven time and time again that one size cannot fit all. Each of these markets are very different. They have very different consumers. They have very different ways of doing business. And so there needs to be a deep understanding of those consumers. Now, I'm not going to pretend to be able to tell you everything about all of these markets in 10 minutes because they're huge. But what I thought I'd do is just give you a few sort of key insights into what's happening, what are consumers doing. And I thought I'd focus on the key markets: China, India, Australia, Korea, and Japan. And I'll spend a little bit more time on China and Japan because I believe they are pretty big markets or interesting markets to you here. So let's look at China. It's pretty scary to see the population versus the number of travelers. Only 12 million people traveled outbound from China in 2006. This is likely to move to 100 million in 2020. This has been driven by the middle classes, and they're getting more disposable income, increased leisure time, and more education, better understanding of English, and more propensity to travel. Also, the ease of some government restrictions on overseas travel has made a massive difference. Even 10 years ago, in fact, I was living in China 10 years ago, and it was very hard even to have a passport. Nowadays, it's much, much easier to have a passport, and there's many more countries that now have the special clearance that allow Chinese travelers to go to those countries. So, even more surprising is that China will become the world's #1 destination by 2020 as well. It will replace France as the #1. 130 million people will travel to China. Now, this is being kick-started by the Beijing Olympics, which happen next year, and also the World Expo in Shanghai in 2010. But the majority of inbound visitors are generally going to be Asians traveling into China. However, there still is a massive market from Europe going into China, and that is only going to increase as the exposure of China as a country and the ease of travel increases. So let's look at online travel bookings in China. Last year they were worth $1.5 billion US, which just as a comparison, Australia did $4.1 billion in 2006, and there's a population of 20 million in Australia. So you can see it's very, very small so far. However, there is going to be massive growth, and they're looking at annual growth of 60% per annum. So we're looking at 2011 being $15.4 billion worth of travel purchased online. And the key trends really driving this are the deregulation of the travel industry. In the past, airlines have not been able to set their own prices. It's all been restricted. Now airlines are looking for new ways to distribute their fares. They can set different fares for online channels, and they're looking to use some of the learnings from the more developed markets. Also, many affluent Chinese are going abroad. They've got better education, they've got better exposure to international news and products, and also better access to those travel products, which is really driving the FIT market. Group travel has always been the traditional way Chinese have traveled, and although this is still true for the mass market, there are many, many FIT niches that are growing massively, and this is really where the growth is coming from. So there's also, as the consumer moves online, there's been an increase in advertising online, and advertising itself overall is growing at 13%, but internet advertising is growing at 36%. And search marketing, which is obviously the Google staple, is really driving this growth. Now, although the market is still quite small, 506 million is a very small market, as online consumption increases, we will be seeing many more advertisers move online. And now is a great time to actually be at the lead of the pack. So in terms of, as advertisers are keen to target the affluent consumer in China, when MasterCard asked consumers to rank their top priorities for how they wish to spend their time and money, they ranked outbound travel as their highest priority, which is great news for everyone in the travel industry. And And obviously, there's a huge need now to actually segment and provide products for those new niche markets. You can also see from this that playing sports and socializing and partying are also very high on their agenda. So perhaps as Spain is great for both of those things, that's one way that you would be looking to market your products. Just going back to search, search is actually very big. It's taken off massively. We're expecting by 2011 that about 98% of all internet users will be using search. It's already 92%. There are two big players, Baidu and Google, and they're really driving massive, massive growth. But, you know, the Chinese internet user is a younger user. 18 to 24-year-olds are prolific users of the internet with high adoption of social networking community sites. In Asia, networking is one of the ways traditionally of doing business, and this is now moving online. Networking and community sites are growing massively across all of the key markets, but China, Korea, and Japan are probably the greatest users of communities. I think the fact that the internet user is younger is probably to be expected in a developing market as well. So what are the obstacles to growth? Because this seems like it's a massive opportunity, but obviously it's a difficult country to penetrate. There are many barriers. One such barrier is the limited use of personal computers. There's also underdeveloped online payment systems and relatively few consumers using credit and debit cards. Cash on delivery is still the predominant way of purchasing travel. You might actually book online, but you don't pay online. In fact, Ctrip, who is the largest online travel aggregator in China, last year received 70% of all of their bookings through their call center. So searching online, yes, then they move offline. And this is a very interesting way that they've managed to make it work and has sort of decoupled the online transaction process. There's also low consumer trust in online, and this is a similar problem throughout the region. This is actually, the Chinese government are trying to address this by putting some laws in place to protect people's personal information, but it's very slow to be taking off. Also, the telecoms infrastructure is not developing quickly enough for demand. So internet goes down regularly, and you know, it's very hard for online retailers to actually manage this. So, in fact, some e-commerce sites have been developing their own logistics networks in order to deliver their products, their tickets themselves, rather than relying on the post office or anybody like that. However, one area that really has the potential to leapfrog the problems with the infrastructure is mobile phones. There's currently approximately 450 million mobile subscribers in China, and this is estimated to increase to 710 million subscribers in 2010. Again, huge numbers. Now, although mobile has not taken off in terms of actual transactions for travel e-commerce yet, 27% of internet users are going online through their mobile phones instead of using a PC or a laptop. There's a huge opportunity for travel to be booked through SMS and mobile websites, particularly as mobile telephones become more useful for e-commerce. We believe there's going to be a huge move to booking and managing travel through these devices, particularly in China. So let's move to India, another massive market in terms of population anyway. Rising salaries are leaving Indians with more disposable income. There's been massive GDP growth. The economy has been fueled by foreign investment and a strong international outsourcing industry. And the growth of the urban population has really, who have access to the internet, has grown online. The government has also supported online through education, and that's really led to a boom in e-commerce. However, you can still see that the online travel market is not massive compared to China or the more developed markets of Japan and Australia. We're expecting by 2011 3.9 billion of online sales, still a very large amount, but not anywhere near like China. The largest online travel segment is air, followed by rail, and hotel accommodation only accounts for a very, very small amount of bookings, mainly due to the fragmented nature of the hotel industry in India. However, interesting to note is that online users seem to be more affluent and brand conscious than those who book offline. So in a recent survey undertaken by Google by a third party for us, we found that Indians feel that reputation and reliability of a company are the most important when choosing the travel services online. This is significant because you would expect an unsophisticated market to be predominantly price-driven. So, as I said, this really does reflect the new online market, the new online traveller. Indeed, many of the new online travel aggregators in India, and there are many of them, are spending significant amounts on advertising to ensure that they have a really strong brand presence. So, in terms of travel online, Indian suppliers really drove the growth. Indian Railways were the first, really, and they started a booking system in 2002, and they've had over 1,000% growth over the last 3 years. Also, air deregulation, which started 3 years ago, has really meant that low-cost carriers have started up. We've got Air Deccan, SpiceJet, GoAir, Indigo, and they've all amassed market share very quickly. In fact, they have 35% of the air market in India already. This has really helped increase online credit card penetration. And by 2010, low-cost carriers are forecast to have 70% market share, massively moving the traditional carriers out of the marketplace. So let's look at the obstacles for growth in India. Again, Indians are wary of online payments, and apart from the younger generation, they've got limited exposure to the internet. There's low consumer trust in the online purchase process. Growth in tourism is placing a massive strain on Indian airports and hotel infrastructure. So for inbound and outbound travel, there's not enough demand, there's not enough infrastructure, there's not enough investment. And there's also a massive shortage of hotel rooms in India, and we're seeing a number of the big international hotel chains swarming into India to build new hotels because demand is overwhelming supply. One other issue with online is payments and infrastructure. On average, Indian Railways, when they do e-ticketing, apparently only 71% of all their transactions are successful. It's mainly due to the fact the infrastructure of the banks is very, very poor, and credit cards fail, and they can't get approvals. So what they've now done is they've found a new way to get around this, and they've introduced new cash cards, which is really a pre-purchase card where you can buy a certain amount and you can actually use that to purchase travel on an online travel aggregator site, and also Indian Railways. So a very innovative way to get over some of these logistical issues that they face. So in terms of future outlook, the rise of low-cost carriers really is increasing the online confidence. The next area of growth, we believe, is going to be online hotel bookings. In fact, Travelocity launched an online hotel-only site, which has done incredibly well, selling international hotels, and they'll shortly launch the rest of their products in India. Online travel aggregators are really hot investments in India at the moment. They've had massive amounts of VC funding in the last 18 months. 4 in particular, Make My Trip, Yatra, ClearTrip, and Travel Guru, all startups in the last 5 years, all receiving in excess of $10 million in venture capital over the last 18 months. And even traditional players such as Cox and Kings are entering the market with online plays. They've just launched EasyGo1, which started this year, which is a very significant move. Also, online travel distributors from the West are increasingly looking to move into the Indian market. Travelocity, as I said, is already there, and Expedia are rumoured to be entering the market as well. So, Australia. The Australian market is a very mature market in terms of online. In 2009, 24% of all travel purchases will be transacted online, and over 6 billion worth of gross bookings will be online. It's the second largest online travel market, as I mentioned, and this is really driven by low-cost carriers and hotel aggregators. Much of it is domestic, but more and more international travel is happening. I think when you consider that the population is only 20 million people, this is very significant. So what's been happening in Australia? Well, domestic travel has seen a slowdown as consumers are more interested in experience-based travel holidays overseas, and particularly as low-cost carriers allow much better value for money when you're traveling to long-haul destinations. Everywhere overseas from Australia is long-haul. The closest place really is Singapore, and that's an 8-hour flight. So being able to go there cheaply is a very important factor. Indeed, we see that there's much more capacity coming onto routes ex-Australia to Europe, particularly from the Middle Eastern carriers, which again is massively growing international travel. So airlines and online travel agencies have been really aggressive in promoting direct sales. They put their best fares online, they have the best prices, and they have reduced commissions for travel agents. Domestic low-cost carriers such as Virgin Blue and Jetstar have really driven all of their sales through the web and have been very successful. There are also new entrants from Asia coming into the marketplace: Tiger Airways, AirAsia X, all low-cost carriers that are coming into Australia to take advantage of this big online travel market. And carriers such as Air New Zealand constantly only offer their lowest fares on their website. They have very innovative tools such as Grab a Seat, which is online last-minute sales, a bit like last-minute hotel aggregators, but in the airline industry, and they've been very successful with that. The major online travel aggregators and hotel aggregators, such as an Australian-grown company called whatif.com.au, incredibly successful in just selling last-minute hotel inventory. Also, Flairview Travel, which is Rates to Go and Hotels.com, has been very successful. And traditional travel agencies are really beginning to accept the necessity of the online channel now. We have people like Flight Centre, Harvey World Travel, and Jet Set Travel World, who are really now beginning to take online seriously and are really ramping up their activity. So just a little bit about Australian consumer trends. As you would expect, I think from a developing market, 77% of all people saw that online was their most important source of information when booking a trip. They do search a long way in advance, mainly because it's a long way to fly, so they need to plan things. They use guides, and they use communities and networks, but nowhere near as much as in Asia. They generally go straight to supplier sites or straight to well-known brands like What If. The propensity to buy airlines is the highest. However, interesting specific destinations, destination marketing organizations are increasingly having to build better sites, richer content in order to help the Australian online consumer make decisions on where they're going to travel, why they should be traveling to that destination, and to allow them to book. And search is really ingrained in the Australian psyche. 92% of all Australian respondents said they used a search engine when purchasing travel products. So search engines now are being used not only to research but also as navigational means to go between travel sites, which is obviously has been driving the growth of Google in Australia particularly. So there's a lot to cover, so I'm moving as quickly as I can. We've just got Korea and Japan to cover off. And just a little bit about South Korea, because it's a very interesting market, because broadband adoption and mobile technology is way advanced. In fact, it has been said that Korea is the place to watch in terms of technology innovations. In 1995, the government decided to invest millions in a high-speed network and subsidize millions of cheap PCs, which has really driven the adoption of online. They have put themselves as the real hub of e-commerce in Northeast Asia, and they have also passed many laws to make sure that Korean personal information is safe, and also that their consumer rights are protected. They are also among the biggest participants in online social networking and blogging. They are also avid downloaders of video and music, and you find that the young Koreans in their teens and 20s are found in their thousands in the very many internet cafes around Korea, connecting with their friends and their communities and surfing for information. They also another major point that's been driving adoption is the easy access of credit cards in South Korea. Even young people get access to credit cards, which again has been driving online travel bookings. Web 2.0, due to the fact that broadband is so high, has really taken off, and it's offering Korean travelers more credible and informative tools to help them create the perfect trip. Just an example, there's a site called SciWorld, which is the largest social networking site in Korea, and over 25% of the South Korean population have a SciWorld account, and up to 90% of all South Koreans in their 20s have an account, which is massive, massive growth, and a massive trend in the marketplace. One, if you're looking at developing social networking, perhaps a good place to look. So, Japan. Japan is a market in itself that's very different to any other market. It's evolved along very different lines. It can often be very hard for foreign companies to go into Japan. They're very fierce local competitors, and also the differences in the way the Japanese search is quite phenomenal. Travel sites have to be redesigned, not only translated but redesigned, because the whole way in which Japanese use these sites are different. Even the Google site, we've had to redesign because it wasn't gaining enough traction. We've recently redesigned the homepage, and it's made a massive difference. Another very interesting factor in Japanese travel industry is the role of the convenience store. It plays a very central role. The Japanese are very security conscious, and they don't like to pay online with credit cards. Cash on delivery is the major way in which the Japanese pay, or by invoicing. And what they do is they book online, and then they pick up and pay at 24/7 or convenience stores such as 24/7. In fact, companies such as Amazon, who are an early entrant into the Japanese market, had to deal with many of these issues, and right now they offer various different ways, multi-channel ways in which to pay, which seems to be incredibly important. It's a very novel way in the internet, and it creates a real multi-channel shopping experience. It also reduces delivery costs if you are delivering goods. So if you are delivering tickets, minimises the chance of fraud, and also provides a secure pickup point. The other key area, again, a key theme in Asia, mobile phones. Mobile phones have 95% penetration in Japan, and the advent of larger phone screens and new innovative technologies, such as barcodes, has led the Japanese consumer to use their mobile phones for transactions. They actually call it the cashless wallet. So there's a whole range of different ways in which you can use your mobile phone in Japan. Even vending machines now. You put money onto your mobile phone, you use it, you swipe a barcode, it debits the amount off of your mobile phone and gives you your Coke, for example. An amazing way of using mobile technology. I thought maybe I might just show you an example of Northwest Airlines, who ran a very creative campaign using mobile phones. And the Japanese love gadgets, and so they rode on this, and they tempted consumers with prizes and games by scanning giant barcodes with their cell phone cameras. And the airline basically covered the city with billboards and subway stations. They also ran online ads as well with these barcodes. And I'm not sure if you can see the big sort of square thing up here. This is called a QR code. And inside it is a hidden message. And you need a special reader to decode it. But in Japan, 30 million mobile phone users have this special reader already. And so consumers snapped a photo of this barcode, and then they were taken straight to a specific website, a shrunk-down mobile website of Northwest Airlines, where they could play games, they could win prizes, and download coupons for flights. It was an incredibly successful promotion that they did, and just shows the way in which you can creatively use a mobile phone. It also provides a great link between your advertising and not having to type in a website into a browser. Other such mobile innovations that are happening at the moment are technology that allows mobiles to communicate directly with TV sets, instantly linking sofa surfers, as they're called, with more information about products. So very interesting and innovative. Another key trend in Japan is the aging market. In terms of consumer profiles, the Japanese market is leading the world in the growth and size of the over 60s segment, and we call that the silver segment. There's been a massive shift over the last 10 years. Low birth rates and longer life expectancy is resulting in a huge growth. Nearly 1 in 5 Japanese are over the age of 65 right now. However, in 30 years' time, we expect this to be 1 in 3. It's the oldest population in the world, and even now the average age of a Japanese person is 43, and the life expectancy is for males 79 and for females 85, which is huge. And 2007 was the first real large-scale retirement of members of the baby boomer generation. And it's expected that this will really mark a watershed and will become a major future trend in Japan. The elderly segment is fit and I've got another one. Fit, healthy because they've got a great diet, they exercise, they are quite well traveled already, so they're more adventurous, and they nowadays they don't have to worry about not spending the inheritance. So they're very happy to be traveling. In fact, they're looking for experiences and opportunities to learn, which really is rising to many new niches in the travel industry, very important. Now, in terms of online, the Japanese older consumer isn't there yet. However, there is a big trend for their children to actually search online on their behalf. So it is very important to still be talking to this user group, even if the segment that they're searching right now is not the actual target audience. So a few other trends. I think I mentioned domestic travel accounts for 95% of travel, but this is increasing. The FIT market is also growing significantly. Again, Japan always used to be a groups market. Now it's an FIT market, and group market is going downhill. New niche segments are opening up. But safety remains a critical factor for Japanese travelers. It's crucial in your marketing that if you're marketing to a Japanese person, that they know that your destination is safe or that your services are protected. They have huge fears about security. They're actually, the Japanese are one of the most sensitive to anything that happens in the world that can impact safety. Travel massively dropped off in 2001 with 9/11, and also the SARS outbreak in Asia saw massive decreases in 2003. But traditional travel patterns are changing. I think this is very interesting, where most men prefer to travel with their wives. Only 27% of women want to travel with their husbands. I'm not really sure why, but obviously they prefer to travel with their friends. And nearly 19% of people are expecting to travel on holiday alone, which again is an important point to note when you're thinking about marketing to this group. So I hope that's given you just a little bit of an insight into the Asia-Pacific online travel industry. You know, consumers are leading the charge, and the growing middle class in all of these markets is seeing a spend on travel and overseas travel increasing, and I think Europe and the US and other Western countries will be chief beneficiaries of this trend. And while they are difficult markets to penetrate, we at Google certainly think that you can't afford not to be focusing on at least one of these major markets going forward. Also, good to keep your eye on these markets as they leapfrog traditional technology, and they come up with innovative travel applications, particularly geared for mobile users. So hopefully you'll be able to keep an eye on what's happening and transfer some of this information to your business models here. So thank you very much. Gracias.